We have Drew White, which has an awesome career as a police slash fire. He'll break that down coming up, but he's also going to help you go ahead and transition from the military, law enforcement, emergency services, and the federal jobs into the corporate world. A little bit of resumes, a little bit of executive protection. Stay tuned. Coming up.
Let me tell y'all out there a little story, man, and it goes a little something like this.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and children of all ages, it is yours truly once again, the Corporate Security Translator, hanging out here with my main man, big time Drew. What's up, Drew? What's going on, buddy? You know, we're hanging out. Guys, you don't know. You don't know. This is like a policeman and fireman walking to a bar. And this is what you get, man. You get a chat with a couple of drinks. Cheers, my friend.
Cheers.
This is my wife's little, for the people that are listening on the radio, my wife has this insulated wine glasses that are really cool. By the way, not sponsored by Rabbit, but it's called a Rabbit, and they're delicious. It keeps your drinks cold the entire time. Great for a long conversation chat. We were in the jacuzzi earlier today, which is quite nice, man.
Where the chat starts, of course.
Oh, man, that was a really warm-up chat there. But, hey, here we are today. We're going to talk a little bit about everything and anything that has to do kind of with the corporate security life compared to kind of the which Drew will tell you about it. He's a big-time fireman slash cop kind of thing. He'll explain what that really means. I don't really know, but it's a little bit of both. And but he'll explain about it, and we kind of get through the chat. So, once again, excited to be here. The Corporate Security Translator, hanging out with my man, Drew. Drew, tell us a little bit about yourself, buddy. Let's get the day started, man.
All right.
Or night.
Well,
Let's get the night. Let's get the night
That's right.
started, buddy.
Thanks for having me, bud. Always a pleasure to see you and to get a chance to come out and talk with you for a little bit.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So I appreciate you having me on as a guest. I'm probably a little bit more not your typical person that you might have based on the theme of your podcast, but I come from a pretty interesting background that might appeal to some people that are interested in.
It appeals to me every time you talk about a gun and fire, and I'm like, oh wow.
There you go. So I've spent the last 23 years in the fire service.
Yeah.
7 years before that in EMS.
Yep.
And some time before that in the corporate world. So I've done a little bit of that.
Jesus.
And as I've gone through my fire career, I actually transitioned into law enforcement.
Right.
I now investigate fires.
Investigate fires.
A little bit different, take than your typical firefighter in that I still am a firefighter. I still can work on a fire engine. I get my medical certs and all that good stuff.
Right.
But my day-to-day full-time job is to be a law enforcement officer. I'm a sworn peace officer, and I investigate fires, and I have powers of arrest, and I testify in court. And essentially, I wouldn't want to say this term and take it, for all the cops out there who might be like, this fireman's trying to say he's a police detective. They would, right?
Yeah.
But essentially, my role is that of what a police detective does.
Okay.
If you were,
But your focus is just fires.
But I only deal with suspicious, illegal fires. Generally, the only time I'll really follow through on an investigation after the preliminary phase is if we think it's an actual arson.
Now, that's not a big thing. Is there a lot of people doing that? We're in California, by the way, for the folks that are listening. We're in California. Is that like a big thing in California? Is it a big thing throughout the United States?
It is. I think that the biggest difference is not every fire department handles all their own arsons. So it's a very, in a lot of places, because arson is a felony, there are a lot of places where you will... there's like 4 things that you have to register for, right? If you're a criminal, right? One is sex crimes. You have to be a registered sex offender. The second one is narcotics, right? So you have to register for that. Third one is gangs. If you're in a gang, you have to register. And the fourth one is actually arson.
Wow. So, I did not know that, man.
Yeah. So if you are convicted of felony arson, you wind up having to register as an arson registrant.
So I didn't even think about that. It's from a prior cop, my friend.
Oh, see? There you go.
I had no clue. Okay.
Based on that, we tend to only deal with people who have committed felonies. And we essentially have that whole same role as a police detective would.
Wow.
And because our city is big enough, my unit investigated over 400 fires last year.
Jeez.
Now, the city that I work in, I believe, had about 4,000 fires.
Wow.
Throughout the entire year. Now, that counts everything, right?
Yeah.
Every kind of fire. Now, I don't mean 4,000 calls.
Right.
We ran about 100,000 calls as a department, but there were about 4,000 of those were confirmed fires. And then about 400 of them came to us and then landed either in court or in an arrest or something like that.
So what you're saying is that not all of them may smell criminal.
Right.
Would this word be smell? I mean, visually seem criminal or something like that. But the ones that are, you're involved.
Because arson is a very specific crime, and
Right.
you have to meet certain elements, just like any other
The elements of crime.
Right. And so in order to meet the actual elements of an arson, a lot of times we get a lot of fires that we don't pursue
Right.
in an investigative capacity because we can tell already they don't meet the elements.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that's close to that is what they call reckless burning, which is also illegal, but is usually, as my police friends call it, a wobbler.
What?
Have you ever heard that term?
No.
Wobbler? A
No,
wobbler
what's
is
a
like,
wobbler?
it could be a misdemeanor or it could be a felony depending on
Got
the
it.
crime,
Got
right?
it. Got
That's
it.
what the
Yeah.
DA always uses for us.
Yeah.
They say, well, it's a wobbler. So it could be one, it could be the other. It depends on the facts of the case. So in the city I work in, we have a bad, or let's just say a significant,
Yep.
I don't want to say bad, a significant homeless population, as many cities do.
Anybody that's ever lived in California,
Right. A lot of unhoused individuals.
unhoused
Unhoused
individuals.
urban
I like
campers.
that. Urban campers. I
Right.
like that.
And so, and because of that, I'll give you a prime example. As it's January, even in Northern California, it gets pretty chilly at night.
Muy frío.
Yes, muy frío. In order to get these guys muy caliente,
Muy caliente.
they tend to start some fires
Yeah.
to either heat their food or heat themselves.
That's right.
And sometimes these fires get a little bit out of control. But at the end of the day, they're not really arson fires because the guy wasn't, or the gal wasn't trying to burn something down.
Right.
They just happen. So there's this reckless burning thing that also you can be arrested for and prosecuted, and depending on the situation, it can be a felony as well. Right?
Absolutely.
So anyway.
So that's a lot of work, though. That seems
Yeah.
like, man, you're full of work and you got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, we do. It is pretty full. The cool thing about us is we still work in a firehouse. We still work a firehouse schedule, which is pretty great. So, and where I work, we work 48-hour shifts.
Right.
But if you get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fires in a 48-hour shift that you're having to at least look into, even if not investigate fully, it fills your day.
Mine sure does.
It fills your 2 days.
That's crazy. But you did mention, so you spent some time also in the corporate world.
Right. So prior to getting hired in the fire department,
Right.
which I got hired in 1998.
Wow, showing your age. Go ahead,
I know,
continue.
Old guy.
Continue.
I did work in the corporate world.
Right.
I have a bachelor's degree that is unrelated in every way to the fire service or EMS.
That underwater basket weaving, I'm sure went far.
Yes,
as a
technically in communications, but which was another great thing because I was a college athlete, so it was a pretty good major for the athletes.
That's
right.
right. That's what I heard.
Right. Yes. Like half of my lacrosse team was East Coast guy lacrosse.
There's
but,
nothing like common.
Yeah,
college.
nothing like common college. So it was pretty good stuff. But I actually was very interested in it, and I majored in television production, and so I went into that field coming out of college because I didn't really have any aspirations to go into the fire service at that time.
Right.
So I wound up working in the corporate world for ESPN, and I also worked for Fox Sports.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting because I was in an office building for some, in master control suites for other parts of my time there, and then I was actually on the television truck at live events for other parts. So it was as more of a freelancer capacity, an independent contractor.
Absolutely.
So I have kind of a big range of areas that I worked in.
Wow, that's pretty cool, man. So as you know, I talk a lot about that kind of people that are transitioning from the military, law enforcement, emergency services, or federal jobs, and they're transitioning into the corporate world. Now, outside of that, you also had an opportunity to work, I think, with a third-party security vendor and doing some executive protection stuff too, right?
I did, and it is interesting as I found myself in my career with life and kind of the way life throws you some curveballs. my wife wound up going back to grad school, and so to pick up a second gig, a little part-time gig on the outside, was going to make things a little bit easier.
Absolutely.
And so it just so happened that I wound up being friends with a guy that ran a company that did executive protection.
Yeah.
He found out that I was looking for a little bit of extra work. I talked to him for a while, and after a pretty lengthy conversation, he said, well, if I train you, get you to EP school and get some training, he's like, almost our whole team is either retired or current PD guys that are doing this on the side.
Right.
It's a pretty big team. There's about 50 guys on the team and gals. It's a residential security team, so we covered a CEO of a large company's residence.
Right.
And so it also meant I had to carry a firearm and some other things.
Right.
So knowing I was going to try and transition to the investigative route in the arson unit, and that was kind of my goal, it just kind of all fell into place.
Wow. Okay.
And so I actually went, signed on with them, and for about 2 years, I wound up it was kind of a neat thing in that I was still a licensed paramedic, and so they really liked having a paramedic on their team.
Ah, yeah.
So
Okay.
it was just kind of an easy sell to kind of get me in the door, even though I was the fire side and not the law enforcement side at that time.
Right.
But I went through the proper training to get permitted and all the backgrounding and the classes, and then I was able to be a functioning member of their team.
All that good stuff, and I mean, it's really key for the folks that right now are thinking about transitioning from those worlds, those worlds, especially the military folks right now. I can think of, if there's something that if you're thinking about what am I going to do after work, if executive protection is kind of one of your passions or something like that, that is a gig that you can think about. As you're retiring from those. And there's a lot of people that are retired military that get into the executive protection world. Some people like it, some people don't. Now, some people would say the executive protection is pretty boring. And
I think that's fair.
It's fair.
That's a fair.
Yeah, when I was with the Walt Disney Company, I had a time in the VIP dignitary team, which it was a lot of long hours and very boring work. And then you kind of get up and you do it again, get very little sleep sometimes, depending on who you're hanging out with. Yeah. And then you kind of, it's very boring. So people think it's a 007 glamorous life that you see in the movies.
No, it was, I will tell you the most interesting or exciting part of it, which was not, it was actually somewhat stressful. In general, we were, you're in a vehicle for 8 straight hours. Right. You don't have a lot of, time off. We had more
especially in the residential units.
In the residential units, you really are securing the perimeter of a residence, right? So, but of course, every once in a while, the particular CEO would, unbeknownst to his own EP team, which I was not on, right? I was only on the team for the residents, would just hop in his car and drive away.
Right.
And so that at that point we were tasked to actually follow until his team caught up.
Oh,
right. And so that was adventurous at times. So there was a little bit of adventure there.
There it is,
hidden in there, but it was pretty great.
A lot of the people that are coming from the cop world, it's almost like, you go to the police academy and you're watching all those cop shows, which now they're afraid to play it on TV. But anyways, I learned a lot of investigative tools from that show. By the way, I was trying to be a cop.
You did, yeah.
But it's like it's definitely nothing like that. 95% of your time, you might be running some tags and pulling some people over, and then maybe 5% of your entire career might be as fun as you may think. But look, if you're retiring, right, and you're transitioning from the military world, this might not be a bad idea. Might not be a bad idea to get into. There's a lot of third-party security vendors out there that are continually hiring folks with the proper background that want to do executive protection. There's a high turnaround in those jobs because it's not exactly what you think it is. And then the ones that actually get to travel with the folks,
right?
It's 24-hour work. It's not an easy gig. It's 24-hour work.
And that was something that we thought, for me, it was a little unique in that they thought I might get to be a traveler because I had the background of EMS and a paramedic,
right,
which they always had to fly with a medic. But I also had that at that point, while I was new to it, I had the EP background. So there weren't a lot of guys that had that combination unless you were a medic in the military.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I would let you do CPR on me.
Well,
I mean,
thanks,
if you
man.
had to, if
Thank
you had to, I'd be all over
Compressions
it.
only, I hope.
But whatever, in today's world, compression only.
That's right.
Back when I was doing things, man, it was not that. I was even singing "Staying Alive" while I was doing compression.
That's
Did you guys do that?
Yeah, of course. I think they teach that now.
Staying alive, the compressions, right?
Yeah, just to keep your
rhythm.
ratio, right?
The ratio, right?
That's it,
okay, well, good. So listen, you had the executive protection, which I think. Look, if you want to get into something after you get out of the military or something like that, that might be a good way to go. Federal career jobs and stuff, especially the ones that like Secret Service folks that retire from the Secret Service and you want to continue.
Yeah, especially if they were ever in those details. I've worked with some of those guys, and believe it or not, in the fire department capacity, when the president would come to town and things like that, we would liaise with those guys. But I think part of it too is the money is not going to be as amazing probably on the EP side.
Right,
I will say, but it's because you have to be a pretty qualified person to get in the door.
Right.
It's actually at least not an insult.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's not, and so it's not like you're working for some private security firm making $15 an hour.
Absolutely.
So you do actually get paid, reasonably well. And if you're already retired and this is now your next gig, it's gravy. So it's good stuff.
I'll tell you, man, I know actually one or two cool people that started in the third-party vendor, the contract guard force side of executive protection, and then from there they went and actually transferred right into a major company, one of the companies that you were talking about that you worked for. So I seen those things, and the opportunities are there. So that's something to think about, because in the corporate security world, there's about 100 million lines of businesses, and they're all in charge of something a little bit different, and there's most definitely the executive protection piece of that. And and you got a chance to work it and everything, and but there's a couple differences. A couple differences in what you do today, and definitely what goes on in the corporate world. And I think you got a chance to see it. We talked a little bit about the chain of command piece, where in the corporate world, I feel that we're okay with going straight to HR. We're okay going straight to kind of the person even above your boss if you need to, and stuff like that, with some issues or problems or anything like that. Tell me a little bit about what you think the differences are in between what you do today in a fire/arson kind of unit compared to what you remember of the corporate world, and what was that like?
Well, I think that you bring up some good points, and I think one of the biggest things is, of course, since I work for a large city, they have definitely the HR department has come to us and said, please know that if you have a drastic, something drastic that happens, you certainly can come right to us. You don't need to go, especially if it's something about your supervisor, right? That you're.
Do you think that is because they have to kind of tell you those things? Because, I mean, in the police world, for sure, we try to take care of it internally. Right. Before we go to HR, are they trying to get that almost HR marketing out there more for, hey, don't be afraid to come to us, we're your friend kind of thing?
They do, but
so the thing really is that HR based, and kind of where your world is, they're there. We know they're there to help, support, whatever the case may be. But however, the difference, I think, in the corporate world is that we're okay going to HR and skipping the levels, where I think in your world is a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think that's in the culturally, it's a culture thing.
Yeah.
And I think that is where, the fire department, police department, they tend to be labeled as paramilitary, right? So a lot of the guys that work in the fire department, the police department, come from the military. They get out of the military, and it's a very comfortable environment for them to transition into, younger guys in particular. So because they already have that culture and they're used to that, handling things, particularly issues that come up, maybe interpersonal issues, or even if something, maybe like, I don't know, it's hard to give an example, but let's just even say on a call, something didn't follow the policy the way that the rest of the crew is used to, or a procedure wasn't followed that maybe put somebody in jeopardy.
Yep.
That tends to come back to the firehouse and get handled at the kitchen table, amongst the crew. And the thought of going to HR is not even on people's radar unless like every other avenue possible has been exhausted, right?
Right.
So sticking within that chain of command is very, very culturally driven in the fire department, police department, military, and to the point where I would think some people, particularly in the military, it would be looked upon as you're being a tattletale or you're a snitch or, you know, something like that. So transitioning from fire police into the corporate world where somebody who's never worked in anything but the corporate world, they're probably not going to look at that the same way.
Right.
So if you have an interaction with somebody that you felt like, well, maybe it didn't go that well, in general, you'll probably work it out at the kitchen table. Yep. Well, in the corporate world, that may go right to HR.
Right.
And you would have no idea. You're not used to that, you know?
So that's a big difference that you got to get through. Coming in from what I said, you know, the military, law enforcement, emergency services, and federal jobs, is that, yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of times we take care of it in-house and we do our best to do that. And where in the corporate world, because of, you know, liabilities and everything else, now you're representing a corporation, by the way, and a corporation can be sued very easily. The military, there's a lot of federal laws that don't allow for such things, so that's a little different. Same thing in law enforcement. You have some laws that you know, kind of cover a little bit on protecting the police officer. But in the corporate world, anybody and everybody can be sued, including the corporation. So we kind of tend to jump right into, hey, you got a problem, you need to talk to HR. We kind of get you right to HR, and a lot of times that's how the cookie crumbles, and then we allow HR to kind of guide a little bit of the direction. And a lot of times it can be nothing. You just say, hey, go, just go. And as a leader, by the way, you should always, in the corporate world, offer HR. As you know, you got a little problem, you know, it's something major. Hey, automatically HR. Go talk to HR. That's the way to go. That's, you know, in our world, where, you know, in your world might still be. Yeah.
Well, just because I think that coming from my world, if I were to transition into corporate, I might just not anticipate that an interaction with somebody that in the firehouse would have been a no big deal. In the, you know, police barrack would have been a no big deal. But in the corporate world, you know, if somebody didn't like the way you spoke to them or whatever, it might go to HR, and you wouldn't have expected that, right?
Right.
Oh, but that was like nothing. Like, well, to the military, yeah, but here it's different. So,
like, you might be able to say, man, why are you being a DEI, you know, and whatever else? Exactly. That might be normal where you're from, right? To where if you're in the corporate world, you go up to somebody, why are you being a, you know, why are you doing, you know, it might not go, it might not work. So
might not go as well,
especially in the corporations today. You know, the corporations today are a little bit different.
More sensitive.
A little more sensitive today. Yeah. A lot of the folks that work in it today are quite sensitive. So you have to be careful with any kind of aggression, or maybe perceived as an aggression of some type, or whatever you say may be perceived as an aggression.
Or even just feedback, like that might be negative.
A harsh feedback.
Yeah, like a criticism of some kind where, you know, in the fire department, you may have been on a fire and you didn't bring a tool that you were supposed to. Yeah. It might not be the end of the world, but your captain's going to probably have some words for you when you get back to the rig.
He's going to remind you.
He remind you sternly, if you don't bring that tool next time, there's going to be problems.
It's just a quick reminder, man.
Yeah, just a little gentle reminder. But in the corporate world, that's probably not going to fly, right? So culturally, it's just a little different.
That's one of the big differences. That's for sure, man. You know, HR is involved in the corporate world, where in your world it's still not frowned upon, but there's definitely
tends to be a last resort.
Yeah, definitely has those things that are. So, hey, so if you're coming into the corporate world, just remember that. You know, some of the things that and how you could speak to some folks in the military, law enforcement, you know, fire department, whatever it is, paramedic world, a little bit different in the corporate world. So just mind your P's and Q's, and because that is different. It's just, you know, there's plenty of folks, by the way, that can attest to that. If you just speak to anybody, speak to anyone that has transitioned into the corporate world, that came from the fields that I always mention, just think about that, and, you know, again, and there's also an opportunity for you to start in a third-party kind of company and then come into a full-time place. So, love that, man. Thanks for sharing that. And,
sure.
Dude, there's a couple of other things, too, that I think are extremely interesting. that you and I have had the opportunity to talk about. And a lot of it has to do with resume, has to do with never being a student and always continue to study and be positive, staying positive. There's a lot of things going on. And the resume piece, I think, is important because it's very different one way or the other when you're applying for one, because you've had experiences where you had to kind of look at your resume, change it all the way around to fit the job itself, right?
Right. And I think that it's, I think some in the military, I think promotions, and I was not in the military, by the way, so I need to be sure I say that. But I feel like promotions are not the same as, like, say, police or fire. You're taking an exam often to promote.
Right. Yeah.
But then once you get through that exam and they establish a list of people that are qualified for the promotion, I know in certain departments, they just take the list and they say, one of my best friends is a lieutenant in the FDNY, for example, in New York. And when his name came up, they gave him a call. Hey, you're a lieutenant. You want it? Yep. Cool. All right. You're a lieutenant. Good. And because, he was just next up on the list.
Right.
Some of the small, that's a huge department, right?
Yeah,
10,000 firefighters, right? So in other departments, like, where I work and other places, you'll get qualified on that list, but then you still have to interview for the spot.
Right.
And when you do interview, because they may only have one position open in your rank, my unit, for example, is a very small unit, so the positions don't open very, very often. You still have to interview. Well, just like anything else, like you talked about with your buddy Tosh the other day, I watched that.
Well, you're a gentleman.
I try, man. I try.
Man, look at you.
All right. This is my boy right here. So, but, tailoring your resume, if you're not already doing that, just because you're coming from the civil service world,
right,
you should be. Maybe you aren't in the position where, hey, maybe they honor the list in your department and they just go right down it.
Yeah.
But that's becoming more rare. So if you're going to have to interview, just like any job on LinkedIn or, where you work, there's going to be a job description.
Right.
And you should tailor your resume to that job description. Keywords and sentences. They're going to look at X number of resumes. And the biggest thing I've learned in interviewing for any of these jobs is the one thing that an overwhelmed person who has a lot of work is looking to do is find the easiest way to throw out a resume,
right,
and limit and narrow that group down, that pile.
Right.
And I'll tell you a quick side funny
well, we
story.
got time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So when my first fire department that I worked for, I actually worked for the Austin Fire Department in Austin, Texas. And when I applied, there was little wording on the top of the application that said, and this is long enough ago that there was not computer everything.
Right.
It said, this application must be filled out in blue ink.
Blue ink.
And of course, anybody who does any filling out of any documents uses black ink. Right? That's pretty typical if something's legal or standard. Sure. So they intentionally put that on there.
Number one.
To see if you'll read the directions. And when 5,000 people applied for that position, right, they were able to throw 2,000 applications in the trash because they came up in black ink or typed.
Right.
It made it a lot easier.
Were you the black ink or blue ink?
I got the job.
Well, you got the job.
Yeah,
you got the job. That's
so,
right. That's right.
To be one of the first 60 people hired on that list.
Congratulations.
I got the job. Yeah, it was a long time ago. But so anyway, my point being is that, they are looking for ways to make their jobs easy.
That's right.
And if you can tailor your resume to a position, for example, when I was trying to get into the unit I'm in now, I had a completely different resume than the one I used to promote into the rank I was before this.
Right.
As a matter of fact, there were very few things other than my education was about the only thing that was the same.
Wow. And that, that is true. What you're saying is exactly it. You got to make it easier on the person that's on the other side. Because throw some bones, man. And one of the biggest things, and I had a big talk with Scott, man, I'll make sure I'll put you on this, but I had a big chat with Scott, and we were talking about the 7-pager resumes. Some people would throw in, 5, 6, 7-pager resumes, and that's just not the way to go.
On my last interview, I actually, and credit to my wife, who is very good with computer graphics, bless her heart.
Oh, you're so nice.
Yeah. But she certainly outpaces me in that area. But she helped build a resume for me that was 1 page.
Right.
and it was just awesome. Like, it had color in it. It was really thick paper
It was updated.
stock.
It was contemporary.
Yeah, it was updated. It was contemporary.
Yeah.
So it was kind of new. I mean, coming from the fire service, everybody else that I interviewed against had a 2-page, not 8.5 by 11 thin sheet of
Right.
paper that they stapled together and just Times New Roman.
That's right.
12 font, whatever. Right.
That's right.
So mine definitely stood out.
Yeah.
There's no even the thickness of the paper.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get it crazy, but it was cardstock.
You're not going to believe this, man. I got a resume one time. It was about 5 pages long, and it was in stencil. Now, everybody go out there and look at stencil writing. It's the old military. It's the military style writing that they put on the side of trucks, like you see U.S. Army. That's the stencil writing. I got a 5-page resume on that, and I'll tell you, you can only put like 3 words on a page, and that's probably why it was 5-page resume.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
But yeah, no, listen, don't do those things. No. Don't do those things. No more than 2 pages. They'll get you where you need to be. So make it the point. Make it easier for the folks on the other side. Really talk to a lot of people. Review your resume. And something that you told me, really match your resume to that job description. That's key.
And you may have to spin something.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. In my previous role, if my captain or supervisor was off, I would hire class in that role, right? So I'd be the acting captain for the day, for the week, for the month, whatever.
Right.
Well, I was certainly not, I was telling the truth in that I was often the person in charge of that
You
unit.
were leading the team.
Right, I was leading the team. So when I put that on my resume, I made sure that not only did I put the job that I did, but that I was the higher class captain, and I put how many hours I did it.
Yep.
And I talked very specifically about what my duties were.
That's right.
In that position, because if I'm applying for a leadership position, even though maybe I didn't achieve that rank in the military or that rank in the police department, it doesn't mean that I haven't done things that you're looking for, with the job description.
Absolutely. And you just brought up another good point, man. I was speaking to somebody on the phone the other day, and they were asking me, look, man, I can't really put what I do on a resume. I said, well, why can't you put what you do in a resume? Well, I do some specialty stuff. And I said, what do you do? And he said something to the effect like, I'm a court officer, but we do a lot of security for the judges themselves. And I said, oh, that's real funny, man. The U.S. Marshals, they do a lot of security like that. By the way, they were not in this country. Not in this country. So they're like, oh, yeah, so I can't really do it, man. I can't put my job description on it. There's not really a job description for it. And I said, look, I got an idea for you, man. Go to the U.S. Marshals website. Counties in the United States also have deputies that only work the courthouses. Look for deputies, courthouse deputies and stuff like that. Look for those kind of job descriptions and see what you could pull out of them. So if anybody ever asks you what you're putting in what you do in your resume, you can say, no, actually, I got that. I copied and pasted from the U.S. Marshals. Which, by the way, when you interview, you'll be able to speak to it because you know what it is, but automatically you're not saying what you do because your job doesn't allow you to put what you do on your resume. So that's a way around it.
Oh, absolutely.
That could help.
I mean, and just, it's not that hard, too, to call the neighboring fire department or the neighboring police department and say, hey, can I see your job description for that job?
Right.
Or, hey, if you're a sergeant and I want to be a sergeant, hey, when you went through, what did you put for your job? I mean, most guys don't mind networking if they're with, we're brothers, right?
Yeah, right.
Even police and firemen, but we try, right? I mean,
it's not my fault that you guys are hose draggers, man, and we actually do the real work.
It's not my fault that everybody loves us and
don't make me put on my cop hat, man, while I'm talking to you. It's right back there, right here, right around there. For the people that can't see, it's right behind my head. But anyways, listen, man, we could do this, and we'll do probably a bunch of these once again. But this is a lot of great stuff right off the bat, man. We can clearly keep on talking and recording. We'll find some other stuff to chat about and then record other episodes of this wonderful stuff. But I just want to thank you, man. I want to thank you for coming out. Thank you for having a drink of Coke with me.
There you go.
Drinking out some, by the way,
Coke
this
and a smile.
Coca-Cola and a smile.
That's it.
It's very nice, man. So I just wanted to thank you for
Thanks
coming
having
out.
me, bud.
It's been a tremendous pleasure. And you're the man, bro.
Thank you. As always, a pleasure to see you, hang out, see the family, and very happy to take some time with you tonight, man.
You're the man. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, it's yours. The corporate security translator and the author of So You Want to Get Into Corporate Security, hanging out here with my man Drew, talking a little bit about what that is, what it is to transition from the military, law enforcement, emergency services, and the federal jobs into corporate security. So thanks again for hanging out with us here in this podcast. Take care and have an awesome night. See ya.
See you. Bye.